Doyle here. Welcome all of you to another season of Indians baseball.
Here's a list of the players we'll be inviting to camp.
This guy here is dead.
Cross him off, then.
We'd love for you to come to spring training for a shot at this year's club.
By the way, you were with me last night. Who's this chick on top of me?
We'd still like to take a look at you at our spring camp.
Not sure I can make it by then.
Welcome to Movie Matters. I'm Kevin.
I'm Jake.
And today we're talking about the 1989 movie Major League. David S. Ward directed it. It's got a great cast, and it is definitely a baseball movie.
Yeah. There's a lot of baseball in it. So.
Yeah, a lot. Our most baseball movie yet.
Yeah, I would say so.
You said you've never seen it, right?
Yeah, it's like I've watched like bits and pieces of like the TV version over the years, but I've never seen it start to finish all the way through. So I'm glad I did because I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah,
it's really good. We'll get into it, but yeah, I mean the cast is just awesome.
Yeah, I love this movie. So, man, I don't exactly know or remember when I bought this movie, but I bought it on DVD a long time ago from like Blockbuster, and I remember I watched it, but it was a long time ago. It was a blind buy. I was just like, oh, like I've heard good things about this movie, and like the cover looks cool and it's baseball, so I blind bought it, and I don't know, I may have been 10 maybe. And I didn't remember really anything about it. And I loved every second of this movie.
Yeah, same. It's actually pretty identical premise to The Natural, where the owner of the team is trying to tank it to profit more or less. But obviously this leans into the comedy aspect of things rather than the dramatic. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, a classic like ragtag kind of, everybody is, you know, mediocre, but like through, you know, hard work and determination and a little bit of like vengeance, they pull themselves together and, you know, become a winning team, which is, you know, always a fun storyline. So yeah, this movie's hilarious. You know, which one of our gripes from the movie last week was that it wasn't that funny, where this one definitely is. I think it's hilarious to me, one, that they got Bob Uecker to be in this movie. And for those that don't know, he is a legendary announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers. He's 90 years old and he still announces for them. And he kind of plays like not himself in the movie, like at all. He's like an alcoholic and like like kind of like really like mean kind of play-by-play guy for the Cleveland Indians, where he's just like talking shit about the team constantly on air and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows the "just a bit outside" line from this movie because it's so good. But he is unbelievably good in this movie.
He is so good.
And like helps sell a lot of the like baseball in the movie. Which I think the other big thing, excuse me, is like the baseball scenes in this movie are actually very well done. Like I've seen some baseball movies where you can tell that it's actors pretending to play baseball. This is not that kind of movie. Like everybody actually looks and acts like a real baseball player, and like there's no like hokey kind of cuts and stuff to like make it seem like they know how to throw a ball right. And stuff like that. Yeah. It's just really well done. And it sells the like realism a little bit, which is great.
Agreed. Yeah, that's. I love that aspect of this movie. It just seems very realistic. And I watched, so we mentioned in our last podcast, I bought the 4K 35th anniversary edition of this, and I watched some of the special features, specifically the making of, and that was kind of David S. Ward. He wrote and directed this movie. He really wanted to capture the authenticity of baseball. You know, he wanted to make this movie for baseball fans because he's a baseball fan, a longtime Cleveland Indians fan, now the Cleveland Guardians, and yeah, more sensitivity. But I mean, I get it. Whatever. It's 2024. You got to change with the times. He was a longtime fan and just was tired of seeing them lose, and so that's why he wrote and made this movie. And it's cool because a lot of these actors played baseball in like high school. You know, Charlie Sheen was a pitcher in high school, and I read that he took steroids for this movie. I mean, what hasn't Charlie Sheen taken? Yeah. You know, like tiger blood. So, you know, yeah, he did steroids, and apparently he pitched 86 miles per hour for his,
which isn't
role.
bad for being just a random. I mean, if he played before, but I mean, like, he probably hasn't played since high school or whatever, so that's not too bad.
So pretty cool with that. Chelsea Ross, who is Eddie Harris in this movie, he played all three sports in high school and college. From what I read, he played basketball, baseball, and football, and he's in a handful of sports movies. He's in this. He's in Hoosiers, which is a 80s basketball movie, which we need to watch because I've actually never seen it, and I hear it's awesome.
Me either.
Rudy in the 90s, we've mentioned that in our Natural podcast, kind of how similar it was. He's in that, and yeah, he was pretty authentic. Also, Dennis Haysbert, who plays Pedro in this movie, who we both know from 24 fame, who plays President Palmer, which we love. He actually hit those home runs for real, which is really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, and you know, they actually shot it in what was then the stadium for the Milwaukee Brewers. It's no longer the stadium they use. They use Miller Park. But they shot all their stuff there, like most of the movie there, which is pretty cool. And just it adds to the authenticity and you know, it's cool that a comedy wants to feel real. I feel like that adds to the what makes this movie so great.
Yeah, and like I was thinking about it today at work, and like this movie teeters on the edge of like wanting to go into like Naked Gun territory, I feel like sometimes, but it does a really good job of like restraining itself and keeping everything grounded in reality. And like I feel like that's probably why I enjoy it so much. Yeah, because it is extremely funny, and like the dialogue is like fantastic. Like all the jokes are like really well timed and really well written. Yes. But like it's also like just a tad goofy, but not outside the scope of like reality. Like one of the goofier moments is when they haul off Willie Hayes in the middle of the night and leave his bunk bed outside of the training camp. Then he runs in his pajamas and beats two guys in like the 100-yard dash or whatever, which is hilarious. Yeah. But like there's just like a couple moments like that are like goofy, but not like so. It's not like Frank Drebin, you know, like knocking people off of a pier and with a car, like, you know, things like that. Yeah. What I like about that is like
it's clearly a joke, but there's no joke really written, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
And in the making of the guy who plays Roger Dorn, Corbin Bernsen, he's talking to the coach Lou Brown, who is awesome in this, James Gammon. He's like talking about his contract, saying like, "Oh, I'm not contracted to do calisthenics," and then Lou just pisses on his contract, and it's like there's no real joke there. It's all the reactions, and it's like it's really funny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think those jokes play really well because it adds almost to the realism, but it's still goofy enough where it's like, they're really not going to do this. Isn't going to happen in real life.
Right. Well, and then Serrano's whole like Cuban hoodoo voodoo like thing is
so good.
Is so wild, but there's a strong history of over the top superstition in particularly baseball. So it's like one of those things where it's kind of a nod, I think, to the sport and the players, where like some players do really weird, wild things to like prep for games. And like, that's like funny. One, because it's like, obviously this like weird voodoo stuff. Like,
It's funny.
but also it's like, a nice nod to the long-standing tradition of superstition in the game.
Yeah. Adds to its authenticity of baseball, which is great. I read that a lot of the players in this movie are based on real baseball players. I read it, but I mean, obviously we didn't grow up in the 80s, so I don't know those players. I'm not that into baseball, but I find that cool. Pedro, I love that he's Cuban and has that accent, and it's just so funny. He's great, and again, the cast is so good in this. Every actor's great. Tom Berenger is really good. I'm curious what you think of the love story with him and Rene Russo. What do you think of that?
So I don't know if it's necessary, but it's like one of those things that I feel like sometimes comedies need some kind of subplot to help drive it along. So like that's a little something that like it adds to like the feel good element at the end of the movie, besides them winning the pennant, and stuff, which I don't want to take us too off track, but every baseball movie is about winning the pennant and not the World Series. And I don't know why. Because like the pennant's just like, congratulations, you won your division, but like you can still go to the World Series. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things where like it's funny, where it's like we won the pennant, end of the movie. Like, oh, so you didn't play in the playoffs? Like,
that's a really funny. It's a really funny observation because I feel the same way. I'm like, there's still more. Right. And like that's kind of how we felt. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if we necessarily expressed it in the natural podcast that we did.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same type of scenario.
Though that one I get, because like he gave it his all to help him win the game, and he retired. So it's like, okay, I understand why you wouldn't go to the World Series after you like completely destroy your body. But like in this one, I don't know why they settled on the pennant instead of going for the World Series, but whatever. It might have been I big of an ask of believability.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's I love certain little elements that really tie into the comedy aspect of it, like Wesley Snipes' name and him pulling up in a Volkswagen Beetle that's made to look like a Rolls Royce. That's hilarious. And then Charlie Sheen pulling up on a motorcycle and he's like on the back of it, and like everyone's like, who the fuck is this guy? Which is hilarious. And like fist bumps the dude, and then because he was in prison. Just very Charlie Sheen, I guess.
California Penal League.
Yeah.
It's a really well done example of like the ragtag, thing like I was talking about.
Yes.
There's a very like interesting and like all the characters are compelling in their own way, which I think is hard to do in an ensemble this big.
Yes.
They all have their own little like storylines and stuff, and like there's a payoff for like every single one of them, which is what I think makes the end of the movie so great. Is like everybody figures their shit out and like, learns to succeed, and like we don't have to go through all of them, but like my favorite I think is that Charlie Sheen is blind. Basically.
Yeah. And he doesn't realize it.
And they put glasses on him, and then he can pitch down the middle.
Yeah, that's really good. I love the dynamic between him and Roger Dorn, Corbin Bernsen, and how he accidentally sleeps with Roger Dorn's wife. I love that subplot. I think that's awesome. And like a huge kick in the dick to Roger Dorn. That his wife does, because I mean, so she sees Dorn on the TV with some other girl, and then she's just like, all right, I'm gonna get all dressed up, and then goes and sleeps with Charlie Sheen, Ricky's character, and like is leaving their house, and Tom Berenger's there, and she's like, oh, bye, and they're like, oh fuck, like I love that.
Charlie Sheen's just sitting in the bed, he's like, I didn't know.
Yeah. And then the good payoff at the end where he comes in, they save Ricky for the last bit to be, the ending closing pitcher, which I love. That's a huge payoff for him too, because he gets to strike out Hayward, who is always homered off of him. And that's a really good kind of plot resolution as well. But then you have him coming in at the end in the last inning to strike out Hayward, and he's afraid that Dorn is like going to be super pissed off, and Dorn comes up and alleviates that pressure, which I love, saying, strike this motherfucker out.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it's just like, don't worry about this, we'll squash this later, which they do.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's win this game. And like that also ties his arc up, Roger Dorn's arc, because he was always throwing the game and like didn't give a shit and wouldn't stop balls.
The big asshole.
Yeah.
And instead he puts his shit aside for the betterment of the team. Yeah.
It's really well done.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game when they win, he punches him in the Roger Dorn punches Ricky in the face, which is awesome. But then they hug again, which is great.
Yeah. And you can't be fully reformed in a comedy, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, again, a lot of great character arcs. The acting's really good. I was super surprised with this movie and how much I loved it. I mean, even from the beginning, like right from the beginning, I loved it. So,
yeah.
It's definitely it's a contender for the best baseball movie of the 80s for sure. Like it might be number one for me, even though I love The Natural so much. This might be. It's going to be a tough choice at the end of our month here.
Yeah, I mean, this has pretty much everything that The Natural has, but comedy too.
Which we love a good comedy.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely up there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely stuck around in pop culture and in baseball because, like you said, the just a bit outside line is very common among baseball players. A lot of players will model themselves off Ricky and him being the wild thing because he was throwing wild pitches and being number 99. A lot of players wanted to kind of emulate that and copy that. So I think that's super cool. What else? I mean, this movie has a very, very good antagonist in it, being that the what's her name, Rachel Phelps, who's the owner and wants to, the whole plot obviously of wanting to basically tank the team on purpose. Her whole arc, well, her antagonistic character is great, and you really hate her. They actually had a alternate ending where she was saying, I really was just doing this so we would actually win, and she really cared for the team. But in test audiences, they took that out, and that they just hated the character so much that it kind of
it wouldn't resolve well, because by that point you're she's a total piece of shit. Like, I want to see her go down.
And then it helps with the motivation for the team, and it needs to stay that way. And I'm glad they did. This movie spawned 2 sequels, which I have not seen. I may have bought the second one, and I don't think I ever watched it though. This one being R, the second one being PG, the third one being PG-13. This movie made a lot of money at the box office. I mean, it was made for around $11 million, and it made like $75 million. So it was definitely a huge hit, and that's why they spawned some sequels, which I think Charlie Sheen is in the sequels, and so is, well, at least the second one, and so is Roger Dorn, Corbin Bernsen, and I think Chelsea Ross also. But yeah, I've never seen him. I don't know if I'm gonna watch him. I don't think it's necessary, but this is definitely a necessary watch. What do you think 80s wise? Do you think it's pretty 80s? I do.
Yeah, for sure. The aesthetic of Charlie Sheen is hardcore 80s. And then the music, particularly at the end in the final game, gets pretty 80s. But there is like a nice element of like timelessness to it. Even though it is like pretty obvious that it's an 80s movie, it doesn't date itself so much that you're like, oh, like this is an 80s movie. And like, I think we both felt that Brewster's Millions kind of dated itself in like a negative kind of way. Where like, this movie I think avoids all of the pitfalls that we found in Brewster's Millions. And also I think is a good example of how comedy evolved even in just like 4 years. It's pretty obvious and night and day, like how like that entire genre kind of changed into something that was a little bit more sophisticated, I think. Yeah. Even though like the jokes don't necessarily have to be sophisticated, but the delivery and the editing and the timing, and everything is much more like structured and put together. And I think it's why this movie pays off so well in the comedy area. I mean, we definitely mentioned that a lot in our review on Brewster's Millions, and how the editing and the pacing and the comedic pacing that is was different and felt different. This movie is a good, I like that how you mentioned that. Like, this movie is a good combination of both the movies we've watched before it, The Natural and Brewster's Millions, and it kind of puts almost two of the two together, and really is the better of the three, or of the two. And, I mean, I will definitely be watching this movie in the future again and again. I mean, I bought it in 4K, and did you end up buying it in 4K? Yeah, I did. Yeah. I'm glad I did, because it looks great, and like has like near infinite rewatchability. Yes. So it's just it's great. Like, I don't even have any real nitpicky kind of things about this movie either. Usually I can find something, but like, there's not much in this movie at all that's not well done. So I was excited to talk about this movie today, because I mean, I enjoyed it so much. And I mean,
I wasn't as excited as last week on Brewster's Millions. So it was good to have a little bit change of pace on this one.
Yeah.
And the rewatch value is going to be huge for me. I'm definitely going to rewatch it. I'm glad I bought it. I highly recommend it to everyone. I mean, it's just a great baseball movie, especially for Cleveland Guardians / Cleveland Indians fans. But yeah, I mean,
even Cubs fans, because man, we went through the same shit
Yeah.
that the team does in the movie. So, it pulled on my heartstrings a little bit at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Getting to relive 2016 a little bit.
Yeah, because I mean, we played them. We played the Guardians / Indians and won, which was incredible. I mean, that was an experience for sure. But yeah, I mean, definitely Cubs fans have been in the same, league, pun intended, with Guardians Indians fans. So yeah, it was definitely a good watch in that regard for sure. Yeah, it's just a feel-good movie, and it's, that ragtag team success story is great, and everyone can relate to that, and everyone roots for the underdog. And, that it really, from what I read and saw in, like, the making of and everything, it really portrays that clubhouse vibe of baseball players really well. And that camaraderie and that comedy and, like you said, like the superstitious nature of Pedro's character, and you've got Chelsea Ross being the religious character, and all these guys, like you've got the old, like Tom Berenger being the old guy, the catcher with bad knees. I mean, every catcher has bad, they're crouching for so long, and it just it touches on each aspect of the baseball. I don't want to say cliches, but like archetypes of baseball players. Yeah. And it's it's good in that fashion.
You touched on it, that the writer and director, is a baseball fan. I think that clearly comes through. There's just so much about it that's just like spot on with the sport in general. And like it just, again, like adds to the authenticity of it. And I think really that's what helps like sell the movie, I think, in my opinion, is how like authentic it is. And you layer, the like top-notch comedy on top of it, and like you have a really, really winning formula,
Definitely. I mean, I looked up what David S. Ward has done before, and he's written a decent amount of stuff. The most notable, in my opinion, is The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Have you ever seen that?
No.
You've never seen The Sting? Oh, The Sting's great. You got to watch that. It's super good. He wrote that. He co-wrote Sleepless in Seattle. He wrote Flyboys of recent time, with that one World War II airplane movie, I think, with James Franco. He wrote The Program, which is like, I think it's he wrote a football movie called The Program. I've never seen that, but I mean, he knocked it out of the park with this one, pun intended again. I'm a big fan. I think it should be on everyone's list, and especially with baseball season in full swing. Another pun intended, my God. You guys should definitely check this out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, next week, what are we doing? We doing Bull Durham next week, or is that the week?
That's the last one.
Okay, so we're doing a League of Their Own.
A League of Their Own.
Yeah, which we both have never seen. I'm excited for that, and we'll see how it ranks among these other movies that we've been watching. So add it to your list. Watch it before, so you can listen along with us when we kind of dissect it, and we hope you've been enjoying these.
Yeah. We'll see you next week.